wearing shoes. And he looked and he could see that there was the factory owner's son and the factory owner himself. He was like a king in this place, for he owned the house that he lived in. He owned the factory that he worked in. He owned probably the shirt upon his back. But he didn't wait for a second. He looked. He was catching fish. This river was for anyone. It was for king or commoner. It was for worker or factory owner. He tried to ignore him, but his bag was still open, and inside of the bag, the factory owner stopped. "You boy, what do you think you're doing? I knew that this had gone missing and you've stolen it. What do you think you're doing? Did you creep in by the darkness of night? Not that you would have had a chance." The boy was wanting to say that he'd found it. He'd found it in the water and he wasn't going to keep it. But the factory owner, his face was now red. "I knew it. I knew it was a mistake to have people from the village work inside of my house. You must have taken it, boy." And it was then that the factory owner's voice stopped. For there the boy could see, by the side of the river, he saw his own grandfather. His grandfather was too old to work, and he'd worked inside of the factory owner when it had been the factory owner's father who had owned it. Generations of the family had worked inside of this place, inside of this factory, and his grandfather had nothing to lose. "You might own the house that we live in. You might own the factory and the very land that we stand on. But first you need to listen to find out how my grandson got that cup. And I do not think that he stole it." Nobody had spoken to the factory owner in this way for a very long time, and he wasn't going to be stopped. But my grandfather raised a hand, not to strike him. "Perhaps you should listen first before you start jumping to conclusions." The boy blurted out how he'd seen it, how he was going to take it back. "A likely tale," said the factory owner. The grandfather looked. "Perhaps you should listen and think. Where could he possibly take it that no one would know that it was him? Where could he possibly spend the money without somebody knowing that he had got it by stealing?" The grandfather looked at his grandson. "I want you to talk to me and tell me the truth. Were you going to steal it?" "No, grandfather." The boy's voice rippled like the water beside him, rippled with truth, with honesty. It was now the factory owner's turn to realize that he had jumped to conclusions and shouted when he should have thought. The factory owner looked. I'm sorry, I will give you some money. I will give it." The grandfather said, "No. From you've had the sweat from my brow and my father's before, and this boy's father and this boy himself, and he's lost the tip of his finger working for you while you got fat and rich. All I want from you is this." The grandfather scrubbed at his chin. "All I want from you is this. That you stop, that you think, that you treat your workers as if they're human beings. Not everybody's out to steal things from you. You've had the sweat from the brows and you've had the work from their backs. Now treat them with some dignity." The factory owner had the golden cup in his hand. It was what he had wanted. But this realization that he treated his workers so badly, as if they were nothing more than cattle, really did strike home. You would find him in Parliament. He would stand there. He would say that things needed to be better for children who worked inside of factories. That all of these people, and he stood there and he spoke these words as if they were his own, that all of the factory owners needed to stop and to think and to treat the workers well. And they did, from that time. All for a chance meeting by the side of a fast-flowing river.